Hello, Year 4. I hope you're all well. You have some retrieval questions here based on what you read yesterday. So, can you think about the following 6 questions? See if you can remember any of the answers. Pause the video and have a go, please. Okay, do you remember whose idea it was to build a raft? That's right, it was Fred's idea, wasn't it? But what did Fred say that they would have to make the raft out of? Yes, they would make it out of wood, wouldn't they, to make it nice and safe and secure and water ready. Where did they want the raft to take them? Because they wanted to go on the river, but where did they want to go and why? That's right, they wanted to go to Manaus in Brazil because we know that's where Lila was heading anyway, but they wanted to go there to try and find people, humans. They hadn't seen anyone in such a long time. Well, or what felt like a long time anyway. But we know that Con wasn't too happy about going on the raft. I mean, she's not often happy about doing a lot of things that the children suggest. But why didn't she want to go on the raft? She didn't want to go on the raft because she was a bit scared, wasn't she? She was scared that they'd either get lost or fall off and end up in a lot of danger, more danger than they're in now. So what did she suggest that they do instead? Do you remember? That's right. She said that they should build a fire and use that to attract attention because the smoke that would come out the fire into the air would attract people to think what's going on there. But Lila and Fred, they didn't want to do that. They didn't think the point of starting a fire in a forest that was so huge they would not possibly be found. So, bit of a prediction question at the end here. Do you think the raft is going to work and that they'll arrive at their destination safely? Some of you thinking yes, they will arrive at their destination safely. Some of you thinking no, they could be a disaster. We will have to read on and see. So in today's lesson, we are going to be summarising events again. Now, instead of summarising all of what we've read so far, like we did last lesson, we are just going to be focusing on this current chapter, all about the raft. This is going to be based on what we have read yesterday and what we are going to read today. So if you didn't manage to get onto the reading video yesterday, can you please pause where you are now, complete yesterday's reading video so that you are able to complete today's lesson, please. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify keywords in a question using these to help you retrieve or find an answer. You will be able to think carefully about the order of events as they have happened. You will be able to decide what is key information that you do need to include in your summary, and what is just extra information that maybe you'd include if you had more than 8 boxes, but because you have to summarise in 8 boxes, you cannot include them because it's just extra stuff that they don't need to know. And finally, you'll be able to identify and answer true and false statements. Okay, so the first word today that we are going to be looking at is this word liana. Liana is a noun. It is a thing. It has 3 syllables. Liana. A liana is a woody climbing plant that hangs from trees. They are especially found in tropical rainforests. You can see a picture here of a liana. You can see you've got the main tree here, but you can see lianas coming from it. So those climbing woody plants that hang from the trees. In the book, it's quoted when it says, Fred soaked the lianas and wound them round and round his fist until they were supple. So we know that he's trying to make a raft. So maybe he's using the lianas to make a raft. Okay, think though, why does he have to soak them? What might he soak them in? Okay, another way we could use this word liana is in the sentence, the forest contained many varieties of liana. So in a forest, there might be different types of liana. They might look different. They might be a slightly different shade of brown. A synonym for the word liana could be a vine. So they look a bit like vines, don't they? These ones are specifically called lianas, but a synonym, a word that might mean or the same, could be vine. The second word today is foraging. This word foraging is a verb. It's a doing word. It's an action. It has 3 syllables, foraging, and it means searching widely for food. So in the book, as the sun set, Lila and Fred and Con went foraging. So they went searching wildly for food. You can see pictures here of people with little bowls, and they are looking at the ground trying to find maybe some berries or some seeds or something they could eat. Here, similarly, they are foraging. They're finding blueberries. This is a blueberry from a plant in the wild. And that is what the children had to do because they couldn't find food from anywhere else. So they went foraging. You could use this word forage in another sentence too. The birds were foraging or foraged for insects and seeds. They were searching for insects and seeds. Some synonyms, words that mean the same: hunting, searching, looking around, actively going out your way to try and get what you need. Whereas a kind of slight antonym or near antonym for this word foraging could be appear. So if you aren't looking for it, it may have just appeared. But we know that in the rainforest where they are now, it probably wouldn't just have appeared, they'd have to look for it, okay? We're going to continue where we left off yesterday. Remember, we had that end of page 71 to go yet. And this is where Khan eventually had she had done the right thing and she was really engaged in making the raft, okay? But we know that, is it probably going to last? Maybe not, okay? So, Fred watched her from the corner of his eyes. Con was different when she worked. Before, she seemed all elbows and claws, touch me not, and defensive eyebrows. But now she seemed absorbed, barely breathing as she bent over the vines. She was really getting involved, getting stuck into making the raft. Fred had never been as proud of anything as he was of that raft. It distracted him from the pounding hunger in his stomach and head. He hauled the branches to the water's edge, dragging them one in each hand, back and forth, beating out a path between the river and their clearing. Con held out a handful of liana vines. Here, she said. For rope, maybe. I don't know. We could dip them in the water to soften them, suggested Lila. Thank you, said Fred. They'll be perfect for tying the corners. So they're trying to make the raft a bit safer and secure by softening the lianas, making them a bit less hard. Con nodded, unsmiling, so she's still being quite stubborn. Fred soaked the lianas and wound them round and round his fists until they were supple. His hands prickled with splinters and he bit them out with his teeth. He sweated so much that his shirt turned into a sort of wearable pond. For lunch they ate the cocoa beans, raw. They were not delicious. It feels like an insult to chocolate to eat them, said Con, because chocolate is made out of cocoa beans, but eating them on their own definitely doesn't taste of chocolate. To try to fill their stomachs, they chewed on the white flesh that lined the pods, which tasted exactly like the rubber at the end of a pencil. Imagine how that tasted. This isn't food, said Max. His chin and lip were quivering. You have to eat it, Max, said Lila. It's nothing else. It tastes mean. Max dug his fist into his eye and tugged at his eyebrow. I want to go home. I know, said Fred. Me too. He decided he couldn't face any more grubs that day and set aside the last of the coca plant larvae. He turned back to the chunk of wood he was hacking into with a jagged-edged stone. We're trying. As the sun set, Lila and Fred and Con went foraging. They went searching for food, dragging a wailing Max behind them. A wailing Max, you can just imagine Max is just behind, travelling behind them, really, really unenthusiastic, not wanting to forage for food at all. Con found purple berries growing in great cascades on a tree. They're acai berries, said Lila. Perhaps people eat them at home. Or, she frowned, looking down at the pile, maybe you're supposed to make them into tea. Fred tried one. It tastes a bit like a blackberry, he said, if the blackberry were angry with you. But it was a relief to have something to chew. So acai berries are quite sweet. They're very dry, and when you bite into them, they taste like a really nice fruit. So they are really nice. Con tried one and sighed. I miss school dinners, she said. They might be better roasted, said Lila. They were not better roasted, but they ate them anyway. Fred crouched by the fire and crammed handfuls into his mouth, trying desperately to fill the churning hole where his stomach was usually located. That night he woke in sudden and excruciating need of the lavatory. So he really needed the toilet. When you are excruciating, it means that you really need something. Minutes later, Lila woke with the same trouble, followed by Con and a hopping, wailing Max. It was not at all an easy night. Fred waded through his dreams to morning and woke feeling like he'd been kicked in the stomach. He turned on his side, groaning, and glimpsed through a hole in the green wall of the den the pile of vines they had prepared the day before. He sat bolt upright, so he was down, and all of a sudden he just sat up because the raft, he thought. He should be able to finish it that day. The others were asleep, sprawled on their stomachs in the warmth of their den. He scrambled out of the shelter and ran down to the river where he'd stacked the wood. The sun was hot and the air was clear. His skin had already burned a furious red. Why do you think his skin was burnt? It's quite hot in the rainforest, despite raining a lot. But he barely felt it as he knelt by the pile of branches. He looped each of the branches together with lianas, working a figure of 8, tying them so many times over that the raft was deep green, every inch embroidered with vines. Fred worked fast, biting down on his wrist and swearing as quietly as he could when he drove a thorn into his thumb. Think of the pain. He made 4 squares, each about 6 foot by 6 foot. Then he stacked them into 2 thicker squares and tied the 2 squares together, tugging the knots tight with his teeth. Yuck! He spat out a beetle. Then he stood back. The raft was rough-edged and stained with soot, but it was a double thick, 12 by 6 foot slab of wood. Very, very large. Fred dragged it to the very edge of the water, drops of sweat running down his nose and into his mouth. He wished wildly that he could take a photograph. He almost could see how his father would raise his eyebrows in surprise and pleasure. Reluctantly, he turned back to the clearing. So they haven't yet gone out into the raft yet, but I just want you to think, do you think they're going to be okay, or do you think something bad might happen? Okay, so today we are going to be looking again at summarising. We know that Sheba helps us with summarising. We've looked at some of these questions before, and some of these questions are examples of when someone is trying to check that you understand a text. So we've looked at this one before, looking at the order in which events appear in a text. Sometimes they will ask you what the message of a text might have been, and it gives you a variety of messages, and you're meant to tick one. And then you have the true or false statements that you need to tick, either true or false. So again today we're going to look at the true and false statements and also look at ordering. Now because we're looking at a single chapter today, there's going to be a lot more detail in your summary, because before you were summarising I think about 3 chapters, so it was a lot more space for you to actually think about the ideas, but today it's going to be a bit trickier. So let's try one together, okay? So using the information from this chapter, tick one box to show whether the statement is true or false. So we can see here that we've got 4 statements, and we need to read them and decide whether they are true, yes, that did happen, or false, no, that did not happen. So it was Lila's idea to build a raft. So I'm starting to think, oh, I know it was someone's idea to build a raft, but was it Lila's idea? So I've just had a bit of a look through the book, and I could see that it actually said it was Fred's idea to build a raft. So that one I would tick false, because it says tick one box, okay? So I've ticked it. Next one, they wanted to use the raft to go to Manaus. Now I'm thinking, they did want to use the raft to go somewhere. Was it Manaus? Was it somewhere else? It was Manaus, wasn't it? Because they wanted to go to Manaus to have some safety. So I can tick that one as true too. Sorry for my wonky ticks, I was trying to draw with a cursor, not a pencil. Next one, they made the raft out of flint and steel. Oh, I think this one is true. I remember they made something out of flint and steel. Was it a raft? Oh no, it wasn't a raft, was it? They made a fire out of flint and steel. They made the raft out of wood. So this one is false. Fantastic. Finally, Fred took the raft into the water with him. Well, we just read that and it was left on a bit of a cliffhanger, wasn't it? Well, we don't know where he went. He went to the water with the raft, wanted to take a picture to show his father, but then walked away back into the clearing. So that one is false too. Oh, okay. So I've just answered the following true or false statements, and I've thought, what is it asking me? And I can use my prior knowledge.